Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. We have a special guest today. Michael Sweet is here.
Hey,
good to see
how you doing? Good to see you, buddy.
Glad
Thanks
to have
for
you
having
here.
me.
You're doing a workshop here at Sweetwater.
I'm doing a workshop, and the word workshop always frightens me.
Yeah.
I'm not a workshop kind of guy, but yeah, just gonna make a presentation on the incredible ISP Theta box, the Michael Sweet one in particular, and
right.
It's pretty exciting, man. It's a first for me.
Right.
I've been working on tone for a long time, ever since I was a young kid, and it's exciting, man. It's great to be here.
I did the review on the Theta Pro when it first came out. Did a video on it, and that's an amazingly comprehensive box. I mean, it's tone in a box, right?
It is. It's very comprehensive, yet at the same time, it's very user-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the more complex, the less user-friendly a box can be, and that's the beauty about that one, is it does so much, but it's easy to learn how to make it do it.
Right.
And the most important part about it, you know, as a guitar player, and I'm a real tone freak, or I like to think of myself as that anyway. You know, it's all about the tone to me.
Sure.
And you know, so many companies nowadays, without naming names, you know, their boxes, their pedals do everything you could imagine. But you know, how many times have you gone through something and you know, you just can't find a preset that works, or doesn't work for you, or what have you? That's the wonderful thing about the Theta is, you know, every single preset you go through is like, wow, that sounds good, that sounds good, that sounds good. Right. So it's just, they've been able to somehow, to me it sounds analog. Mm-hmm. That's the only way I can describe it, but obviously it's not. Very
amp-like. When you plug it in, you run it direct and it sounds like you're playing through an amplifier. It
really does. And that's the other thing I wanted to say and touch on is, I have used and owned everything pretty much through the years, almost. And the one thing that was difficult for me to achieve with any of the digital multi-effect, you know, pedals and whatnot, was the direct was always somewhat workable, but the amp, feeding my amp, I was never able to get the tone out of my amp that I wanted to get, where it sounded like an amp. Right. There was always something lacking, the headroom or the EQ. You had to be manipulated in crazy ways. That's the beautiful thing about this, is I can actually feed my amps and it sounds incredible. Right. Very little EQ, and just I still have that headroom, and it doesn't fart out, and it really sounds great. So what is the difference with your signature model versus the standard Theta Pro? Well, not a ton of differences, but certainly differences. The first one being there is a panning effect, excuse me, not a panning effect, but there's a rotary effect, which sounds really incredible. There's a tuner, built-in tuner, which the original does not have. There's an extra EQ circuit, which is really everything for me. That's what enables me to get that Stryper tone. Right. And just kind of dial it in. And my favorite tones from the past are, Boston was a big influence of mine. That kind of started me on my quest for the ultimate guitar tone. And then Michael Schenker. And then later on in life was Randy Rhoads. So those three tones are all about pre-EQ. Right. All about manipulating the distortion. And giving you that certain, you know, just defining the distortion with the pre-EQ. And that's what I love about the Theta, is it has that and more. Right. You know, you can really manipulate the distortion and tighten it up, and yet you don't, it doesn't thin out. You know, so it's a real tight, defined, chunky distortion, but at the same time, it's a real thick distortion as well. Right. And then there's so much of it. And then you have the decimator, built-in decimator, so you can, you know, it's completely, you hit a chord and when it stops, it's just silence. Right. You know, which is amazing. Yeah, doesn't choke your notes, you're holding lead notes, doesn't choke them. Nice. It's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned Boston, Michael Schenker, and Randy Rhoads. Those are three pretty distinct tones. I mean, the Boston is an iconic tone. Michael Schenker with the Cocteau, the mid-range is so particular there. Randy Rhoads has such a searing tone. Oh, yeah. So articulate. How do you meld those together to create a composite? Well, I mean, it's kind of, I think if you listen to a Stryper album, for example, you listen to Hell with the Devil or Soldiers Under Command, either one of those albums, you're going to hear little flavors of those sounds, all three of those sounds in those albums. You're going to hear a little bit of the Boston thing. It's that compressed, real defined, tight when you're chunking the low E or the A or what have you. And you're going to hear a little bit of the Michael Schenker because it's got a little bit, my tone has a little bit of that half-cocked wah sound.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm doing with the Theta. I've got the wah engaged as part of my sound, the Michael Sweet rhythm sound. And then Randy Rhoads, same thing. He used a lot of pre-EQ as well to, again, manipulate the distortion. I mean, how many times have you plugged into an amp and, you know, you want to love it, and you say, wow, this thing looks amazing. Oh, my gosh, I've been waiting for this. And you plug it in, the distortion just doesn't work. It's,
right.
You know, it's muddy or it's not defined. And I'm a guy that comes from that school of very defined distortion. You know, and in order to achieve that, you have to be able to do things on the front of it.
Right. I would project that comes from the fact that you spent so much time on stage, especially in big rooms, because there's a difference between what I call a bedroom tone.
Right.
That sounds wonderful when you're sitting there jamming by yourself, but when you take that onto a big stage in a big room, it's something else entirely.
Absolutely, completely different. And there's no question about that. And you know, it's funny because I started way back when I was 13 years old. You remember Lab Series amps, of course.
Sure.
I walked into a pawn shop. I saw Lab Series, and I thought I saw the little parametric knob on it, and I thought, oh wow, that's different. And I played through it, and I loved the sound. It was a solid state amp, but I really liked the tone. But it didn't have that tube. So I bought it, took it home, and I wound up. I'm one of those guys that'll do things even if I blow up an amp. I'll still try it.
Right.
You know, I'll mess with pickups and I'll mess with pedals. I might fry them or this and that. But in the process, I come across something kind of cool eventually. That's what happened with the Lab Series. I wound up preamping a Marshall with that, out of the preamp out of it, and feeding a Marshall, and that was the Stryper tone birth at that moment. We were playing with Rat back in the day, and I used to hide the Lab Series behind my Marshalls. And all the guys would come up to me. Robin would come up to me, you know, and 6'5" or however tall he was, and he'd say, Michael, what are you doing? What are you using? You know, I'd say, yeah, that Marshall, you know, it's modded a little bit. So I wasn't completely truthful. But it was the Lab Series giving me that thing, and then it morphed from the Lab Series into a Furman PQ3. We started using Furmans back in 1983, 84. And then we moved from that. Eventually, I moved into the Tech 21 area as my front end. Now with the Theta, it's all in one box.
Right.
I don't have any other outboard pre-EQs or anything like that. It's just giving me what I need out of the one box.
Super convenient.
And I've, you know, I have Line 6 and, you know, Fractal, and I have all that stuff, which is all great for what it is and whatnot. But nothing has pleased me for what I need as much as the Theta.
Nice.
So it gives me everything, direct and through an amp.
Nice.
It's beautiful.
So on stage then, are you miking your amps with the Theta running through it, or are you taking it direct off that straight to the console?
Believe it or not, the amps sound fantastic, but when we mic the amps and or take a direct feed off of the back of the amp with the radial or what have you, it's no better. It's actually not as good as the direct out on the Theta.
Nice.
So we wind up, my sound man always winds up just bringing the faders down on the mic signal and just pushing the faders up on the DI. It's a stereo DI off of the Theta.
Sure.
And it just sounds absolutely phenomenal. My brother described it as it sounds like a giant robot coming to kill everybody. I thought that was an interesting analogy, but it's pretty ferocious, you know.
Right, right.
It really is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So stepping back a little bit, who was or what was Roxbury Regime?
Oh, gosh. Roxbury Regime, basically we started out as Aftermath and then Firestorm. I joined my brother's band when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And I played guitar, but I didn't play guitar in the band at that time. I just sang. And then eventually when we became Rox, ROXX, and morphed into Roxbury Regime, we were a trio. So it was just myself on guitar and vocals, Eric Johnson on bass, my brother Robert Sweet on drums. And we were Roxbury Regime for probably about 3 to 4 years. Even when Oz joined the band, we remained Roxbury Regime. The only reason why we became Stryper is when we signed our deal with Enigma Records, they didn't like the name Roxbury Regime. So, and I was kind of cheerleading that in the background. My brother loved it. Because he's all into the army hats and regime, you know, and he loved it. And it was always hard whenever I would tell the name of the band to someone, they'd say, what, who? It was always a tongue twister. So the label wanted a new name. We started thinking about new names, came up with Stryper in a 2-week period. And it was interesting. It was funny because everything was already striped.
Right.
You know, we're sitting there looking at the yellow and black walls thinking, what do we name the band? You know, it wound up being Stryper.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then we, of course, too, everybody knows, I would assume that we did the Hollywood scene for years and, the, you know, all the stuff that goes along with that. And we decided to go down a different path. And, you know, we became a band that, we're a rock band, but, you know, we sing about different, you know, the lyrical content is a little different.
So the subject matter is a little bit different, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
More positive, and you know, we tell people about God and good things and heaven, and you know, versus hell, and it's just a different approach. And and we mean what we. It's not a gimmick. A lot of people think it is, but it's not.
Right.
You know? So anyway.
It appears, looking at your career through the years, that you've had the luxury of being able to do the Stryper music, which is obviously very heavy, and then your solo career, you've been able to explore some other sides as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing with my solo career is I'm able to musically experiment a lot more. You know, when you're in a band and you develop a certain sound, you pretty much have to stick with that, or certainly close. When I do solo stuff, I experiment and do whatever I want to do.
Right.
I mean, I've even like, you know, experimented somewhat with country flavors here and there. I grew up in a country family. My dad's a country writer and singer and whatnot. I used to play on his sessions. So I love doing that. So I get to experiment because of that with different guitar tones.
Sure.
You know, it's not just that Stryper tone. Stryper is a plug and play thing. I never changed my tone once through the whole set. Ever. When I do the solo thing, I've got a lot of different tones going on. And you know, it's different enough from the Stryper sound that I think people appreciate that, because it's something fresh, you know, and different.
Right.
It's not just an extension of Stryper. But I will throw in a song every now and then just to say to people, you know, I'm going to still give you a little edge here and there.
Yeah, right. Right.
Try to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to mix it up and have
Exactly.
a variety of flavors on there.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boston when you were talking about tone, but you were in Boston.
I was in Boston, yeah. Brad Delp, you know, had passed and tragically, and you know, I got the call. I had said something about Brad and what he meant to me as a singer. He's one of my all-time favorite singers, and I got the call from my manager, Kim Scholes, Tom's wife, asking me if I wanted to be a part of their what was supposed to be last concert in 2007, and I said, of course. So I spoke to Kim on the phone personally, and she said, yeah, we were thinking we'd love to have you come sing Higher Power and some other song. And internally, I thought, dang, you know, I'd like to sing More Than a Feeling,
Right.
you know?
Of course.
Something like that.
Right.
But I said, whatever you want me to sing, be an honor. So they had Sammy Hagar come in, and Ann Wilson and Mickey Thomas, all these people coming. And a lot of them weren't able to show. So they called me back and asked me if I would be willing to sing Peace of Mind, Rock and Roll Band, More Than a Feeling. And that's when I went, whoa, deer in the headlights, like, oh, crap, you know. I got to sing that stuff. That's probably the hardest stuff to sing in rock and roll, you know.
Right.
So I learned the songs, rehearsed at home, learned everything on guitar, walked in with my guitar. And Tom, I don't think, really knew completely that I played guitar. He seemed surprised when I walked in with the guitar. And he goes, oh, wow, you know, hey, plug in, you know. And I plugged into Brad's rig, the Rockman pedal, which was a little surreal. And we started rehearsing, and Tom was blown away by the guitar playing alone. And then I sang, and they really liked that. And I went and did that show with him. And right after the show, he came to me backstage and said, hey, we want to continue on. We want you to be a part of it.
Right.
And that was it.
Right.
I went and did the tour with Styx in Boston in '08, and used PRSs and mirrors, PRS mirrors, which I love, I still have. And I ran through the Rockman brains, which sounded really great.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I don't know if we were on camera or not, but I did add a little bit to the front end to try to put a little bit of my own signature tone in there, which was the Tech 21 Paradriver.
Right, just to shape it just a little bit.
Yep, I shaped it. I took the Rockman, and a lot of things that bother me about a lot of boxes is there's this real high end, anything above 10K, I like to pull out. I pull it all out.
Right.
I don't like that it's a scratchy kind of, anything that's on that scratchy, in that scratchy shed tone wise, I pull it out. So that's what I was doing. I pulled all that out, and then I added just a little bit around 750 or 800, which gave me a little bit more of my conk, conk, conk kind of thing. And that was it.
Right, right.
And Tom he let me do that. He would come over and say, hey, what is that you're using? He did that probably 4 or 5 times. Huh. Then I ordered him one. And I walked up and I said, buddy, happy birthday. It was his birthday, and I gave it to him.
That's awesome.
Hopefully, I don't know if he uses it or not, but
right.
he liked it.
Right. It had to be very interesting to go from Stryper, where it's your own identity and you've established your style both as a vocalist and a guitar player, to then step into something like that where there is kind of an established voice, certainly, as well as a guitar tone.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we all know Tom's a genius, and he obviously was a founder in terms of, I think, did he not create the first headphone amp, basically?
Yeah, right.
I mean, the rock
portable guitar amp, yeah, right.
Right. So, I mean, and he's one of those guys where I remember him, he was really into ice skating, and he didn't like the ice skates that he got at the ice skating rink, so he built his own ice skates. These things looked like they were from Mars, you know? Right. And they relieve pressure and all this. He built a machine to stretch his back that they would wheel in backstage, and, you know, he would build this stuff because he's a, you know, he's an engineer. And he's a genius, but, you know, he has great ears too. And I would always go over. I'm one of those guys where I'm a tweaker. I'm always tweaking. And when Tom would be flying in on his plane and we'd be sound checking, I'd be over re-EQing the amp. And he'd come in and he'd go, hey, Michael, did you add a little bit, around 200 to 300? I'd say, yes, I did. I added just a couple of dB, man. He'd go over to the slider and put it back. So I just thought, wow, that's some ears, you know. I thought I had good ears, but he's got pretty amazing ears.
Right, keeping you honest.
But it was fun. It was fun playing with them.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, playing those songs I grew up on and standing next to Tom, and it was definitely a highlight of my musical career. Right. For sure.
Right. Another project in your discography that I thought was interesting was the Suite and Lynch project with George Lynch.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how 2 guitar players relate in a project like that.
Oh, man. Well, you know, it's funny because Serafino from Frontiers Records reached out to me. I had established a good relationship with him, and he reached out to me and said, hey, I want to put together a quote-unquote supergroup. And I said, great. And he said, I want you to sing. I said, so just the way I'm built. I emailed him. I said, well, forget singing only, you know, how about if I produce the thing, you know? Right. And co-write it and do this and that. And he goes, great idea. Who do you have in mind? And the first guy I thought of, because he had mentioned Dawkin, John, who plays for Dawkin now, Don Dawkins Dawkin. And I think John's phenomenal, but my first reaction was, well, why don't you just get the original guy, George? So I emailed him that, and he said, you know him? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. I reached out to George. George said, I'm in. And that was it. And then the no-brainer rhythm section was James Lomenzo and Brian Tishy to me. And we made an album. It was released a few years back, and we just wrapped a brand new album. It's yet to be released. It's coming out this year. And we just shot a video, and it's really cool. It's different.
That's great.
You know, it's got a lot of throwback qualities to it that take you back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now. All kind of merged. It's really, I'm really proud of this album.
Well, that's exciting.
So is Jordan. We all are.
Look forward to hearing that. That's
yeah, it's cool. It's a cool record.
That's great.
Yeah.
So in addition to guitar, vocal, songwriting, producing, all the other things you do, you're also an author.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, what led you down the road to release an autobiography?
I think everyone's writing books these days, but I don't know if that it necessarily makes them, you know, valid, legit authors. But I just basically told my life story, you know, and shared it in many interviews over the phone with someone, and they helped me put it together. Dave Rose, my manager at the time, and we put together a book, and I wanted it to be really honest. And the thing I found that was very difficult, I thought it was going to be easy, but it's very difficult to be honest but not throw anyone under the bus. Really hard, because these people are all part of the story. Right. And not every story is a good story. You know, it's a learning experience. And, you know, I just wanted the book to have all that in there to say, hey, people, this is really me. This is stuff that really happened. But here I am, you know. And that was the hardest part, So, you know, I went through it and read it and edited it and whatnot, and took out some stuff, added some stuff, and I'm really happy with how the book came out, and I hope people are as well. It did very well, you know, and that's the comment I get most often is, wow, the honesty was much appreciated.
Right. Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Had to be interesting to from a standpoint of being able to convey all those stories, look back on that time. Well, your whole life, for that matter.
Yep.
But if you were looking back now and talking to your younger self,
right,
about to head into the Stryper years,
yeah,
and what would you have to say?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, the would have, could have, should have thoughts that we all have later on in life. You live and you learn. You know, I would have done some things differently, but I don't really have many regrets. I don't know that I really have any regrets, because everything that we all go through in life, by making the choices that we make, teach us later on in life why we made those choices, and sometimes take us down paths that we should be on instead of the path we wanted to be on, you know. And that's why I'm just one of those guys where, you know, I made a bunch of mistakes when I was growing up, but I sit here now hopefully a better person because of them, you know.
Right.
And that's what I really wanted to share in the book. I didn't want to whitewash anything. I didn't want to add to everything. Some of these autobiographies I read, and, you know, I'll just be honest here, I don't really believe them, you know, because it's like you hear these guys telling their stories crystal clear, but they were drugged up out of their minds. I don't know about you, but any drugs that I did in the past, I don't remember much about those times. But it's always kind of astonishing. But, you know, I just wanted to be very honest and upfront. And that's what you get in the book, the autobiography. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're out on an acoustic tour.
I'm about to start on an acoustic tour. I do a lot of acoustic dates on my own, and I'm trying to figure that whole thing out, because that's a whole other beast. I mean, when you go up in front of an audience with an acoustic guitar, you're under the microscope. You know, if you're not feeling well, they're going to hear it. You can't hide behind, you know, 4 Mesa Boogie stacks. So I'm learning how to do that. I'm using loopers. I just ordered from you guys, by the way, the Finhole, I'm not sure what it's called, but you basically start it and it starts a groove for you.
Sure.
Made in Germany. I've got that, and I've got a couple loopers I'll be using, and I've got the TC Helicon Live 2 that I use very carefully for a couple of harmonies here and there.
Sure.
Instead of doing the plug the guitar in, I set each song to a key, and then you get less of the jumping around. It's much more natural. But yeah, so I enjoy doing that. It's simple. I go in with my guitar, I perform. There's not the 10 or 12 person stress of all the details and logistics of, you know, dealing with everything surrounding that. So it's kind of nice. I enjoy it.
And did I see that you're going to record a live DVD at one of the dates?
I'm going to record a live DVD of an acoustic show. That's going to be the first and very cool. We got a Stryper acoustic album coming out at some point down the road. We got the Suite and Lynch album coming out this year. We start recording a new Stryper album this year. That'll come out early part of next year. And then I'm doing an album with Joel Hoekstra. And that is going to happen at the end of next year. Not sure who's going to drum and play bass on it, but we're talking about guys like, you know, maybe Dean Castronovo, or, you know, we want something different. Todd Schukerman, something very different than just the power rock kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, we want to mix it up a little bit. And Joel's one of my favorite guitar players.
Awesome.
And favorite people.
Very exciting.
Yeah, man.
It's a shame you don't have more to do.
I'm one of those guys, listen, hey, I'm ADHD and OCD. I joke about it all the time, but I'm very driven, and I'm always doing something. Like right now, I just finished up 3 days ago the Suite and Lynch album, and I'm feeling antsy to start on a new album already.
Right.
I can't not be doing music, you know.
Right.
It's just the way I've always been. And I think I figured out something to the effect of, in the last 8 years, I've done, I think it's 12 albums in a book, and I think that's it.
That's plenty.
So, you know, a couple albums a year feels good for me. George does more than that. I think George does 3 or 4 albums a year.
That's amazing.
He's a madman.
Very prolific. Right. But that speaks to your success and your long career. So congratulations on that.
Well, yeah, I still got a little ways to go. I'm only 32.
Sure.
You know,
Long way to go.
32 years old. I mean, I got another 40 years at
I
least.
can't believe you're that much older than me. Man, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Looking
much
forward to the
appreciated.
workshop.
All right.
And lots of cool things happening. We'll be watching for the albums and videos and all kinds of stuff going on. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. Thank you for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more guitars, more amps, more effects, and we'll be making a lot of music. I'm Mitch Gallagher.